For Prince William, after a year he described as brutal, it matters. His wife, Catherine, was diagnosed with cancer.
He's painted himself into a corner by saying that, don't you? Because he's gone so far down this road now.
And I remember my grandmother being the first person out of Balmoral, running across the lawn in her kilt, and came charging over and gave us the most mighty bollock.
William and Kate, I think, have their own idea of what they want to do, and I think, you see these two people moving forward.
Over the years, they have looked at my coverage and felt it was what I always try and be, is balanced and fair.
I think it would be refreshing for the King to talk about some of the struggles other families.
William was sort of delighted by the fact that people warm to Catherine, recognise the work she's doing and that she gets a lot of publicity.
He read the comments as well. He would read the comments under the stories.
Really?
And tell you about them. Yeah.
Default reaction here has been to blame the British press for almost everything, but we all remember the reality that when those comments were made.
Well, it is certainly very controversial here, just because, they were the most extraordinary.
We don't need to rush them, particularly William. We know Kate won't be back till after Easter, but I think William, as a devoted...
And that very drastic action from the King was very different to how the Queen handled it for many years.
When Prince William sat down with his grandmother just weeks before marrying Kate Middleton, he had a problem. The guest list for what would become the wedding of the century didn't include the people he actually wanted there. What Queen Elizabeth told him next would break royal protocol in a way no one saw coming. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Royal Archives. The conversation happened behind closed doors at Buckingham Palace in early 2011. William had just received the official guest list for his April 29th wedding to Kate Middleton at Westminster Abbey. Nearly 2,000 names. Diplomats, foreign royals, government officials, distant relatives he'd never met. He looked at the list and realized something that stopped him cold. He didn't know any of these people. Royal weddings aren't private celebrations. They're state occasions wrapped in centuries of protocol. The guest list gets vetted by the Foreign Office. Commonwealth dignitaries expect invitations. Members of Parliament assume they'll attend. The machinery of monarchy runs on these expectations, and for generations, royal brides and grooms accepted this reality without question. Queen Elizabeth herself married Prince Philip in 1947 with a guest list full of strangers. It was simply how things worked, but William wasn't willing to accept it. He requested an audience with his grandmother. What he said to her revealed something deeper than frustration about seating arrangements. He was about to make vows to spend his life with Kate Middleton. He wanted the people who actually knew them to witness it. Not diplomats conducting business, not distant cousins preserving tradition. His friends, their friends. The people who'd been part of their nearly decade-long relationship. Royal editor Roya Nikkah from the Sunday Times, who's covered the monarchy for over 15 years and secured exclusive access to palace sources, revealed what happened in that meeting. She shared the story in the BBC documentary Royal Wedding: A Day to Remember. According to Nikkah, William told the Queen directly, "I don't know any of these people." He wasn't just bemused, he was unhappy. This was supposed to be his wedding day, and he was being asked to perform it for an audience of strangers. The Queen could have shut him down. She'd followed protocol her entire life. She understood the weight of duty better than anyone in that palace. She'd sacrificed personal preference countless times for the institution. William was asking to overturn precedent that stretched back centuries. The easy answer would have been a gentle reminder about royal responsibility. A kind but firm no. That's not what happened. The Queen looked at her grandson and said something that shocked even those close to the conversation. Rip that list up. Start where you want to start from. Invite who you want. And that's exactly what they did. 3 words. Rip that list up. They represented a fundamental shift in how Queen Elizabeth viewed the future of the monarchy. This wasn't about William being indulged. It was about her recognizing that the institution she'd protected for decades needed to evolve. If royal weddings felt like diplomatic theater instead of genuine celebrations, something had gone wrong. She was giving William permission to do what she'd never been able to do herself. The decision carried risk. Foreign dignitaries might take offense at being excluded. Government officials could complain about broken tradition. The optics of a future king rejecting the establishment guest list could fuel accusations that William didn't understand his role. But the Queen calculated a different risk. If William felt like his own wedding was being taken from him, if this day became another duty instead of a joy, the resentment could poison everything that followed. She'd watched her own children's marriages struggle under the weight of royal expectation. Charles married Diana in 1981 in what looked like a fairy tale from the outside. Behind the scenes, the pressure had been unbearable. The scrutiny, the performance, the sense that their relationship existed for public consumption rather than private happiness. By the time William came to her with his guest list problem, the Queen had decades of hindsight. She knew what happened when duty crushed personal connection, so she gave him the rarest gift a monarch can offer: freedom. The final guest list still included nearly 1,900 people. Protocol couldn't be completely abandoned. Foreign royals like Prince Albert and Princess Charlene of Monaco attended. Crown Princess Victoria and Prince Daniel of Sweden were there. Government ministers filled Westminster Abbey pews. But scattered throughout were William's university friends, Kate's school companions, people who'd watched their relationship grow from St. Andrew's flatmates to engaged couple. The wedding itself reflected that choice. During the ceremony, cameras caught moments of genuine joy rather than stiff formality. William whispered to Kate as she reached the altar. They exchanged private smiles during the vows. The reception at Buckingham Palace felt more like a celebration than a state function. Their friends danced. William gave a speech full of personal stories instead of diplomatic pleasantries. The evening reception was intimate by royal standards, limited to 300 guests they actually wanted there. But the Queen's decision reached beyond that single day. She'd established a precedent. Future royal weddings could balance tradition with personal choice. When Harry married Meghan in 2018, their guest list reflected the same philosophy. Meghan's friends from her acting career attended. Harry's military brothers-in-arms were there. The service included a gospel choir and a fiery sermon from Bishop Michael Curry that had nothing to do with British Reserve and everything to do with who Harry and Meghan actually were. Roya Nikkah's revelation about that private conversation between William and the Queen matters because it shows decision-making at the highest level of the monarchy. These aren't just family stories, they're institutional choices that ripple forward. The Queen spent 70 years on the throne, learning when to hold firm and when to let go. William's wedding guest list became a test case. Could the monarchy adapt without losing its essence? Could duty coexist with personal happiness? The Queen had another private conversation around that same time that reveals how carefully she was thinking about the transition ahead. She invited Catherine to Buckingham Palace for tea, just the two of them. Kate was about to become a working member of the royal family, and Elizabeth wanted to prepare her. According to royal expert Russell Myers in his book William and Catherine, The Monarchy's New Era, the Queen offered something unexpected during that meeting. She gave Kate guidance on how to deal with headstrong husbands. Think about that for a moment. The Queen had been married to Prince Philip for over 60 years by then. She understood exactly what it meant to balance a strong personality with royal duty. She'd navigated Philip's frustrations when he had to walk 2 steps behind her. She'd managed his directness when diplomacy required subtlety. She'd learned when to let him lead in private while she led in public. And now she was passing that knowledge to the young woman about to marry her grandson. The meeting lasted hours. They talked about the guest list, and the Queen reassured Kate there would be plenty of room for her loved ones. They discussed the pressures of public life and how to maintain private moments. At some point during that conversation, the Queen did something extraordinary. She offered Kate the chance to choose from her personal jewelry collection for the wedding, not the state jewels, her own pieces. Kate left that meeting with what one courtier described as a spring in her step, and she left wearing the Cartier Holo tiara, a piece from Elizabeth's personal collection. These 2 conversations, one with William and one with Kate, show a queen thinking generationally. She was 84 years old. William would one day be king. Catherine would be his queen consort. The choices they made, the tone they set, the balance they struck between duty and authenticity would define the monarchy long after Elizabeth was gone. So she gave them tools, permission to prioritize their relationship, practical advice about managing royal marriage, and symbols, like that tiara, connecting them to royal history while encouraging them to write their own story. The wedding itself became the most watched royal event in decades. Nearly 2 billion people tuned in globally. In Britain, 26 million viewers watched the ceremony. But the numbers don't capture what made the day resonate. People responded to the genuine emotion. William's nervousness before Kate arrived, her visible joy walking up the aisle with her father. The moment William slipped the ring on her finger and whispered something that made her smile. The balcony kiss that felt spontaneous rather than choreographed. That authenticity started with a guest list. With William telling his grandmother he didn't want to perform his wedding for strangers. With the Queen understanding that some traditions matter less than the happiness of the people keeping the institution alive. Roya Nikkah's account of that conversation gives us rare access to decision-making that usually stays hidden. The Queen didn't announce she was changing protocol. She didn't make a public statement about modernizing the monarchy. She just told her grandson to rip up the list and invite his friends. Years later, that choice looks even wiser. William and Kate's marriage has become the stable center of the working royal family. They've raised 3 children while managing increasing royal responsibilities. They've modernized their public roles without abandoning royal dignity. They've shown that duty and personal happiness don't have to be opposing forces. And it started with a queen who loved her grandson enough to break protocol so he could have a wedding that felt like his own. The contrast with previous generations becomes sharper when you consider what happened when personal happiness wasn't prioritized. Charles and Diana's wedding in 1981 was magnificent. St. Paul's Cathedral, a dress with a 25-foot train, 600,000 people lining the streets. But behind the spectacle, both Charles and Diana later admitted they had serious doubts. The pressure to perform, to deliver the fairy tale the public wanted, overshadowed their actual feelings about getting married. The result was a union that struggled from the start. Queen Elizabeth watched that marriage deteriorate throughout the 1980s. She saw how media pressure amplified every problem. She witnessed Diana's loneliness and Charles's frustration. By the time they separated in 1992 and divorced in 1996, the Queen had learned painful lessons about what happens when royal duty crushes personal truth. So when William came to her with his guest list concerns, she wasn't just being a kind grandmother. She was applying institutional memory. She was choosing a different path. The decision to let William control his guest list also sent a signal to the British public about who the royals were becoming. For decades, critics had accused the monarchy of being out of touch, trapped in outdated traditions, unable to relate to ordinary people's lives. Ordinary people invite their friends to their weddings. They want celebrations that reflect their actual relationships. By letting William do the same, the Queen was demonstrating that royals could honor tradition without being imprisoned by it. Not everyone approved. Some royal commentators worried about setting a dangerous precedent. If future kings could pick and choose which protocols to follow, where would it end? Constitutional experts debated whether the monarchy's strength came from its consistency or its adaptability. Palace insiders quietly expressed concern about offended dignitaries and diplomatic complications. But the Queen held firm. She'd made her choice. William would have the wedding he wanted. Looking back from today's perspective, that single conversation changed the trajectory of how modern royals approach major life events. It established that personal happiness matters, not as rebellion against duty, but as essential to fulfilling duty long term. William and Kate have carried that lesson into how they're raising their own children. They've fought to give George, Charlotte, and Louis as normal a childhood as possible. They've limited media access. They've made choices that prioritize their children's well-being over public curiosity. That protectiveness started with a queen who told William to rip up a guest list. The story also reveals how Queen Elizabeth balanced being a constitutional monarch with being a grandmother. She understood both roles completely. As monarch, she upheld tradition and protected the institution. As grandmother, she wanted William to be happy. The genius was recognizing that in this case, both roles pointed in the same direction. A happy, authentic William would serve the monarchy better than a resentful one going through the motions. So she gave him permission to choose his own path while staying within the broad boundaries of royal responsibility. Roya Nikkah's reporting gives us access to these private moments that shape public outcomes. We see the wedding day, the crowds, the pageantry. We don't usually see the conversation in the Queen's sitting room where she told her grandson to rip up the establishment list. We don't see the hours-long tea where she prepared Kate for the realities ahead. But those private moments matter more than the public spectacle. They're where the real decisions get made, where traditions either survive or evolve, where the future takes shape. The final piece of this story is what it tells us about Queen Elizabeth's vision for the monarchy's future. She reigned for 70 years. She saw the institution survive scandals, divorces, deaths, and massive cultural change. She understood that survival required adaptation, not abandoning core principles, but applying them with flexibility. William's wedding guest list became a small but significant example of that philosophy. Hold firm on what truly matters. Let go of what doesn't. What truly mattered was William entering marriage with joy rather than obligation. What didn't matter was whether the third assistant to some foreign ambassador got an invitation. The Queen made that distinction clearly, and in doing so, she gave William and Kate the foundation for a marriage that's now become the model for how modern royals can honor tradition while living authentically. That's the real revelation Roya Nikkah uncovered, not just what the Queen said, but why she said it, and what it meant for everyone who came after.